Okay. And right now, Ed, you are in the spotlight. And it is 8 o'clock, so whenever you're ready to roll.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our annual legislative update. Usually it's a breakfast. Obviously, this year we're doing it virtually, which is something brand new for me. I'm kind of excited to see how it all goes. I appreciate everybody's attendance and also your patience, because this is a live event, and when we're dealing with politicians and people getting called into session, we never know for sure who's going to be here and who isn't. So we'll get it started this morning. For those that may not know me or may be guests, I'm Ed Hofer, President and CEO of the New Berlin Chamber of Commerce. And I'm really excited this year. We actually have a sponsor for the event, and our member SWCTech, which are great IT professionals. They're here to make sure that I look as good as possible. And at this time, we'll hear from a representative of SWCTech to tell you briefly what it is that they do.
Thanks, Ed. I'm going to go ahead and highlight myself here real quick so everyone can see me. So everybody, my name's Eric. I'm with SWCTech. I've been with the company for about 3 years, and my title is Client Success Associate. SWCTech is located in New Berlin, so I could probably throw a rock over to Ed's office if I was in the office. We've been around for 17 years. We have about 30 employees, and we're a technology consulting firm. A business has technology needs, whether that's migrating to the cloud, using Microsoft Teams for their voice solution and file sharing, cybersecurity protection, and all of those things. As we work with a lot of manufacturers right now, we're seeing a lot coming from the CMMC and NIST compliancy. So we're helping a lot of businesses tighten down their cybersecurity efforts to ensure that they're able to maintain those contracts and get new ones as that process kind of unfolds. We also have a help desk staff locally here in New Berlin. So we help businesses with their end user support as well. And we have a great team of really smart individuals that really kind of rounds us out. So really strong bench. And we're happy to host this event on Microsoft Teams. So I'll be moderating in the background and helping out with the presentation. All right, Ed, back to you.
That's great. Thanks. I really appreciate it. I'm also excited to announce that with our partnership with SWCTech, we're going to begin a series of quarterly educational webinars as well. I know there's a lot of people out there that have a full IT department, but there's also a lot of small businesses and entrepreneurs and old folks like myself that don't know the ins and outs of all the latest software, and that's what they're there to help us with. So watch the calendar, and you'll be able to see when our event is coming up in March. And if it's something you're interested in, just click to join. Otherwise, watch for our other ones, and hopefully we'll have a topic that'll be of interest to you. So again, thanks to SWCTech. At this time, just kind of moving along, we will start out with our annual report from Mayor Dave Ament to find out what's happening in New Berlin, and also hopefully he'll touch on what's happening county and state-wise that may be affecting businesses in the city. So Dave, welcome. Looks like we need to unmute Dave.
Dave, there should be a mute button at the very right-hand corner at the top.
I'm sorry. I had you muted on my end. First of all, I'd like to thank the Chamber for inviting me to give you this shortened version of my State of the City presentation. Eric, next page. I'll start with our development highlights, and here are just a few of them. First, we have a new 150,000 square foot Bryan building in the Westridge Business Park at 165th and Small Road. On the northeast corner of Coffee and Calhoun, Drexel Building Supply is constructing a 7-building complex of showrooms and warehouses in the industrial park. Bryan has also received approval for a 300,000 square foot distribution center at 190th and Lincoln. The new 153,000 square foot Ethics indoor sports facility on the northeast corner of Racine and National is currently under construction and expected to open in 2021. The city is working with Newman Development for a 27-lot, low-density, single-family conservation subdivision on the 117-acre quarry parcel. Next slide. I think I got ahead of you there. One more. There we go. Now you can go to the next slide. I apologize for that. Some of the completed developments include the learning experience at Beloit and Forest Point Boulevard, the Pro Healthcare Regency Senior Community Complex at 137th and Field Point, the Star of Bethlehem School Edition at 3700 South Casper Drive. Next slide. Oh, we're there. The city has entered into a public-private partnership with Burghardt Sporting Goods at the old Walmart building. The ribbon cutting for the Burghardt Sporting Goods portion of the facility will be March 25th of this year. Next slide. In the city's portion of the facility, we are in the final stages of design and engineering for our intergenerational recreation center that will replace the old Hickory Grove Recreation Center. Next slide, please. Wait, back up one. I screwed up. There we go. This facility will allow our recreation department to create, cultivate, and expand our many recreational programs, including summer day camp, cooking classes and demonstrations, aerobics, and exercise classes, volleyball and basketball, and an elevated walking, jogging track, fitness, dance, and yoga studios, an indoor playground, a teaching kitchen, gymnasium, multi-purpose classrooms, lockers, offices, and a mezzanine. Next slide, please. As part of our fundraising efforts for the Recreation Center, we are planning to offer advertising opportunities. If you're interested, please feel free to contact us here at the city. Next slide. This past November, the city completed the 6,500 square foot addition and renovation of the New Berlin Historic Museum at the New Berlin Historic Park. Next slide. Turning now to engineering and streets, in 2019, we rehabbed almost 12 miles of streets. 2020, we rehabbed another 10.9 miles of streets. Next slide, please. In 2020, our DPW department removed and replaced the retaining wall on Wall Street in the city center that had collapsed. Next slide. We constructed a side path between Beloit and Moreland Road, completing a connection from residential areas to commercial areas near Beloit and Moreland Road. Next slide. We installed an additional 44 pedestrian lights, completing a lighting system along both sides of National Avenue from Moreland to L. Stigler Drive. Would you please page through the next 5 slides as I quickly describe just a few of the improvements we have made to the city center and the city center plaza?
Sure thing.
Okay, the city has installed a concession stand, fire pit, landscaping, expanded the ice rink, and added a driveway for additional access to the parking lot along Michelle Whitmer and Whitmer Memorial Drive. The council has approved the reconstruction of Calhoun Road from Beloit to National Avenue and the reconstruction of the Sunny Slope and Grange intersection. Both are scheduled for 2021, as well as an additional pedestrian lighting along the south side of National from the Farmers Market to 147th Street. Small road from Moreland Road to College is under design for construction in 2022. Next slide, please. One more. And one more. There's your Farmers Market. One more. And one more. And one more. All right, Waukesha County has begun design and engineering for the pavement replacement project for Moreland Road from Beloit to just north of National Avenue. The actual construction is scheduled for 2023. Next slide. That's their calendar for the progress on this. Next slide, please. The city has renewed its agreement with CGI Communications to produce a series of 7 new videos for the municipal website. This program is provided at no cost to the city and also gives businesses an opportunity to do some advertising. Next slide, please. Our new tourism website is a place to find everything New Berlin. If you are looking for something new and exciting, follow along on Facebook and Instagram, as well as enjoynewberlin.com. Next slide. Okay, New Berlin was here. The New Berlin Tourist Guide. Here are just some of the accolades New Berlin has recently received. New Berlin has been named the safest city in the state of Wisconsin by safehome.org. We were named the best city for millennials to relocate to in Wisconsin. Ranked the best city in Wisconsin to retire. Ranked 5th in Wisconsin for providing homeowners with an excellent return on investment. Ranked the 14th biggest friendly city in Wisconsin for homeowners with a mortgage. And Borky Commercial Real Estate lists a vacancy rate of only 2.3% in our New Berlin Industrial Park. And something that we're really proud of, Moody's Investment Services has again assigned New Berlin its AAA bond rating, the highest rating possible. There are only 2 other cities in Wisconsin to be assigned the Moody's AAA bond rating. The AAA rating provides the city with a very low, get this, 1.0878% true interest rate on our general obligation promissory notes. That reduces the debt service on the city's operating budget. So that reduces that burden and helps us get more accomplished. As you can tell by my list, we get those things accomplished at a reduced rate. So Eric, I would just want to thank you for this. And one nice thing about doing this by Zoom is you can't see it, so I don't have to hold my gut in while I'm talking. So thank you.
It's another advantage, I suppose. That's good.
It is one advantage. I'm looking for the silver lining.
So
thank you, Ed.
Thanks, Dave. A couple of quick questions for you. One quick one to Eric. Eric, I got an email from Jennifer Hansen that she would like to have the link sent to her. I don't know if you can do that in the background or not.
Perhaps Shane can help out with that.
And Dave, while they're working on that, can you touch a little bit on the water project and how that may impact the city?
The lawsuit has been dismissed. Waukesha has dismissed it. We have come with a intergovernmental agreement with Waukesha. They're working on parts of it right now. If you've been down Racine Avenue, you see the return line is under construction right now. And the input line, the water line and mains are being installed along Coffee Road right now. So right by my house, they're digging things up. Out of this whole project with the agreement we have with Waukesha is in the end, after the project is completely done, we're going to repave the entire length of Coffee Road. So it's going to get completely rehabbed from National Avenue all the way out to Racine. Hopefully everything will go smooth for them and they'll get in and get out. Their timeline is 2023 that they have to have it completed. I think the biggest disruption could come when they get to the intersection of Coffee and National, especially, I'm not sure of the timing for the farmers market, but we're working with them to reduce any traffic congestion areas on the weekends in that area.
Thanks, Dave.
Ed, can you share Jennifer's email address with us in the chat? And then
I'm going to forward it to you here just real quickly. That's why I love live stuff.
It's gonna roll with the punches.
All right, so I should have sent that to you.
Okay, I'll keep an eye out for it here. And then Ed, do you want to introduce the next speaker and I'll highlight you?
I do. All right, thank you, Dave. The Chamber's worked hard over the years to have a good working relationship with the New Berlin School District. They do an excellent job. And we're going to get a report this morning from Superintendent Joe Garza. Joe, are you available?
I am.
Well, take it away, sir.
All right. Well, I don't have the formal presentation that Mayor Ament had, but I am proud to say that we've stayed safe to stay open. Sorry, Paul Farrow, for stealing your thunder on that. I'm sure you'll get to that, but really proud that our school district has been open since the start of the school year. And let me just kind of share with you how that has gone. As you know, literally about a year ago, we were having conversations about a pandemic, and certainly we were starting to prepare for what we thought might be a week or two shutdown. Well, in March, we got the news that we did have to shut down. And then shortly thereafter, the governor shut down all schools, K-12, and throughout the state of Wisconsin. We were semi-prepared to do what we needed to do to provide learning opportunities for our students as best that we could at that time. Certainly, we couldn't do the level of rigor. We didn't have all the research digital devices for all students K-12 like we do now, but most certainly we were able to make do and do the best that we could. Then we went into the summer. We started working directly with the Waukesha County Health Department and Paul Farrow and his office and his staff. And we were going to do what we needed to do to get Waukesha County schools, particularly the school district of New Berlin, back on our feet to get ready to get back to in-person learning come the fall. Well, I'm proud to say with hours of planning with the county health department, with Paul's office and others, we were able to get going right from the start of the school year. We ramped up with about a week or two since we had to, what is kindergartners with masks going to look like? What, one-way hallways, social distancing, setting up plexiglass partitions, setting up a new schedule for our middle and high schools, busing and what that meant, getting kids separated on buses. We planned and we were able to deliver. Last week, Monday, we presented to the school board our levels of academic achievement since then. We did find that there was an academic gap in our students, particularly in math, that they came into this fall, which they hadn't experienced in previous years. I'm happy to say that based on testing and assessments that we did in January, that we are closing that achievement gap caused by that pandemic. And we are certainly heading in the right direction. Our behavior rates are down. Our attendance is up, regardless of whether students are attending face-to-face or virtually. Our special education referrals are down. Social emotional issues like anxiety, depression, and so on are steady but different this year. Obviously with students at home, because we did offer a virtual option to families if they so chose, isolation can become an issue for some students. And just the fact that we are in the midst of a pandemic, that can cause anxiety for students as well. So while I say we've had social emotional situations, they're not more, they're just different. And so again, just extremely proud, from the county to our students. Our students have been extremely resilient. Our families have been supportive. Our community has been supportive, and certainly couldn't be more proud of the work. I believe Dale Coinga is on the call. I'd be remiss not to share that Dale his team. I've been in contact with Joe Sanfilippo, Mike Kuglich, and also new Senator Julian Bradley's office as well. They are doing what they can to support districts that have gotten to be open versus some of these other districts that have not. Unfortunately, you've got districts across 124th that literally just opened a couple weeks ago to face-to-face learning. Nothing against them, we're each, to all their own. But if you notice, we've been open face-to-face, and we have noticed some decline in academics. Again, we're ramping back up. I just cannot imagine the level of achievement gaps that have been caused in places like Milwaukee, places like West Allis, places like Madison, Green Bay, and so on. The gaps that they will find once they get their students back face-to-face and are able to assess. So with that, that's really going to be my big focus. I will put in the chat box a link to our most recent annual report, so you can please take a look at that again. We continue to achieve at high levels. At the same time, we identify gaps and continue to work on those as needed. I'm open to any questions. Thank you.
All right, Joe, thanks. I have a couple of quick questions for you in case no one else does. Can you speak just briefly on what the response was between the parents and the staff with all of the changes and things that were going on?
Yeah, so our staff certainly coming into it were concerned for their respective safety. We all had a lot of questions going into the school year, and we were trying to build the airplane while we were flying it. And so certainly we took necessary precautions as best we could. We've identified the fact that no student to staff nor staff to student transmission has occurred. And that's based on the precautions that we've taken at school. A lot of the transmission is occurring while off campus, while either staff are doing their personal things, living their life, or our students are doing their things. As far as parents, because we were able to offer multiple options, whether it was the face-to-face option or a virtual option, we were able to appease whatever option our families chose. While certainly we had bumps and bruises along the way, like we all have as a result of this pandemic, overall, our families have been content. We've sent out surveys, received feedback, some good, some feedback that we've had to respond to and make adjustments to. But again, certainly very proud of our efforts. And again, we couldn't have done it without our teachers, staff, and our parents and their support. Thanks, Ed.
Just two other quick questions for you, Joe. How has this impacted and when do you think you might be able to go back to normal, the ability for the students to continue working with the business community? And then also, if you can address just briefly again, any extra costs that this has caused and if funding is available for that.
So let's just start with the first piece. Certainly because of the pandemic, businesses have had to make adjustments in welcoming our students into their respective business. What I will say is we do have Ann Warchel in the meeting. We are always interested in connecting with area businesses to connect our students with their work. As you all know, we want to continue to be a part of the solution as it relates to worker shortage in the city of New Berlin and that of Waukesha County, and across the spectrum. As you all know, we have certainly moved our efforts forward in college, career, and life readiness. Please check out our website for details on that. But again, slightly impacted, but we continue to move forward in those efforts. And then as far as funding goes, most certainly we've spent quite a bit of money to the tune of anywhere between $750,000 and $1 million, and it continues to go up. And like I said, Dale and others have worked, Dale Kuinga and others have worked at the state level to ensure that we get our fair share in our efforts. So ESSER 1, or the first CARES Act funding, came out. We didn't get a lot of funding based on the way that the dollars were distributed. But I won't get into detail on that. ESSER 2, those are the dollars that are being allocated right now. The majority of those dollars are being allocated in a certain way. And Dale and his team, his work with the Joint Finance Committee, they're working on getting dollars out in a more equitable way for school districts like ours that have been open since the start of the school year. So we thank Dale and others that have supported those efforts for their work. And then it's my understanding that the third tier of funding, ESSER 3, is supposed to be coming out. I don't know exactly when, 6 months to a year from now. That will again boost K-12 public schools with additional funds, and those dollars are to be determined. Again, I would just encourage any of you that are looking to either fill a gap with your respective workforce needs, or any sort of opportunity, a tour, a mentorship, an apprenticeship, whatever it may be, please reach out to us. Like I said, Ann Warchel is on the meeting. She'd be happy to take any questions as far as that goes.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate that update. Newly elected state senator Julian Bradley was called into a session and he's unavailable this morning. We do have 5th Senate District Representative, or I should say State Senator Dale Kayenga on the line. Dale, are you there?
I am here. I'm actually going to switch to a laptop here to be a little more smooth in the presentation. So, if this works. All right, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right. Well, that's right. A great handoff with Joe. Thank you, Joe, for pointing out the work we're doing with you guys. And I cannot tell you how much we appreciate Joe Garza and the school board and what New Berlin is doing to keep our kids in school. We talk a lot about politically, you hear a lot about social justice, and you hear about inequities, and really I get that. But we have an opportunity right now to address those issues, and that is by keeping our schools open. If you look at the rate of homicides, you look at the rate of suicides, you look at the number of kids failing classes, the test scores, every single metric says that the lack of teachers physically present with our students is causing huge harm in those communities. The only metric that actually has gone down that looks good on its surface is that the number of child abuse cases has dramatically decreased. This is while domestic violence has actually increased. So the reason is you got to dive into that, like, why is that happening? Well, why is that happening is because teachers are the largest group of what they call mandatory reporters that require them to report when they suspect child abuse. And with these kids not leaving their homes, they're just not seeing these kids. So we don't know what's going on in the home. So to me, this is the issue right now. I think politically what you always hear about is politicians and people trying to solve downstream problems. Great little story in the book Upstream where you have, let's say it's Dave and I next to the river, and we see a kid floating on the river, and we swim out there and we save the kid, and then swim out there again and save a kid, and just we keep saving these kids that are going down the river. And finally, while I'm swimming out to save kid number 15, Dave finally goes up the river and tackles the guy throwing the kids in the river, right? And I think that the problem we have right now is that we're going to see next year and the year after that is all of these downstream problems of more homelessness, more inequities, more poor test scores, kids that can't read and can't do math proficiently. Now's the time to fix those issues. And so I've just been relentless with pushing legislation, with educating people on what's going on, writing articles, that right now is the time to tackle the guy who's throwing the kids in the water. And the guy who's throwing the kids in the water is the teachers union, is these big school districts that are focused on themselves as opposed to focused on the kids. And so, I'm a Christian man, so I like to count my blessings on a frequent basis. The blessing that New Berlin is doing to keep their kids in schools is tremendous. And I cannot think that this community cannot thank Superintendent Joe Garza enough for the work that has taken. Now, in the infinite wisdom of Washington, D.C., with their backward ways, when Joe said he wouldn't get into details, I will. I'm the detail guy, so I will tell you the injustice, if you will, in what the feds are doing. The feds are showering billions and billions and billions of dollars onto COVID problems. What they've done is they've done a lot of education funding. What they also have done is that they've done that education funding and they distributed 90% of that through Title I funding formulas. So what that means is, for those of you that don't know Title I, it's a program to help people that are communities that are poorer than other communities. I'm not arguing for or against Title I. That's a whole different conversation. My point is COVID relief is for COVID relief. It is to overcome the symptoms and the problems associated with COVID. This isn't another distribution program. And so what has happened is, because the money from the feds is going through Title I funding, that means like New Berlin is somewhere around, I don't have it in front of me, 20 to 30 bucks per kid they get in relief. And meanwhile, places like Milwaukee Public Schools are closer to $800 and they're closed. So the school districts like New Berlin are not even covering their cost of the COVID related expenses. And meanwhile, school districts that are closed, 100% virtual, and most of the kids aren't even attending, or a lot of the kids aren't even attending, are getting exponentially more, like 100 times more money. So, or 10 times more money. So point is we're going to try to, in the budget, we're going to try different ways to equal this out. We cannot touch federal money, but what we could do is, on a one-time basis, is we can adjust the state money in order to equalize this out and have a more level playing field. Because I'm not saying that school districts should be punished, but for crying out loud, school districts that are open should at least get as much as school districts that are closed. And so we'll be working with the team of schools on that and try to fix that. And I think that places like MPS, where they should segregate all this federal money, and they should immediately come up with robust plans for school in the summer for the next couple of years. I mean, they're going to have to close this gap. And I think that money should almost be 100% reserved for teacher salaries. I don't pay what the market is. I don't care if teachers make. In fact, I would love teachers to make another $20,000, $25,000 in the summer. I don't care. My point is that get those teachers that are willing and get those students in the classroom in the summer to catch up, because they're going to have to close the achievement gap. To me, this is like more important to our long-term national security than what's going on in the Pentagon. This is more important to our economy long-term. That's what's going on in the boardrooms. Like, this is the issue, and the issues now. We passed yesterday, I think it was. Yeah, we did yesterday. We did some more adoption of the federal relief on the tax side. So businesses will continue to see tax relief from Wisconsin. If you know me, tax relief has been a huge priority of mine. I want to keep going down that road. We had a bill passed unanimously out of my committee that would eliminate the second tax bracket. If you've been following what I've been advocating for years, it is continuing reduction of our taxes in a responsible way, and also collapsing our brackets, making it just get towards a flat tax in Wisconsin. And I'll just say, finally, we're able to do that because Wisconsin is very financially solvent. We have over $1 billion cash on hand. We have an additional $1 billion in the rainy day fund. The number of outstanding debt is going downward. We are not as awesome as New Berlin with a AAA bond rating and a 1% rate. Maybe we get Dave to run for governor. But we are doing very well by comparison. And we're doing that, and every single time, and we're going to hear it again, every single time I'm in the building and I'm advocating for tax cuts, every single time I have Democrats and too many Republicans who say, well, it's a little insecure. We don't know what the future's going to hold. Like, why would we cut taxes? We got to have a little bit more in the, around just in case. And I always say, if you think you have uncertainties, there's more uncertainties in our families and our businesses. let's cut taxes. And every single time what happens is we cut taxes and we have more revenue than we expected. More revenue than we expected, and we cut taxes. So it's a winning formula that we started when Governor Walker and the Republican legislature took over from Governor Doyle and the Democratic legislature. That is the winning formula we are going to adhere to and keep fighting for. And I know you guys have been great with your feedback, and it's an honor to serve you. So thank you for the time.
Thanks, Dale. I appreciate the update, and I'm sure that we'll be in touch in the months ahead. It looks like we have State Representative Mike Kuglich available and ready to go. How are you this morning, Mike?
I am good. It took a while to get in, but you know, being an older guy, I'm not a tech-savvy individual like Dale. But if you have specific questions, or else I can just kind of give you some of my thoughts on where we need to go. And I think Dale did an excellent job of explaining, you know, what is happening with the federal dollars to our education with COVID. I think it's important that we reward good behavior, and the New Berlin School District is, I think, a shining star and an example of good behavior, having in-school learning since September. And as Dale said, we are going to see the negative of this virtual learning, or literally lack of learning, that is going on. If you look at MPS has more truancy now during virtual learning than he ever did before. That kids literally will turn their computer on and then never participate. And I think there's one thing that we know is that if people want to break the poverty cycle and want to be successful, education is the key. And that is so important, and we are doing such an injustice right now. When I kind of look at the governor's budget just came out Tuesday night, and you know, this is a big reminder that elections have consequences. Dale was talking about the surpluses that we've been able to build up. Dale and I came in 2011 together, and what we were able to do under Governor Walker and a conservative legislature is cut taxes, put in economic growth policies, and curb spending. But if you look at the budget that just came out from our governor, it includes $1 billion in new taxes, mostly aimed at the business community, and they say the rich because they want to divide. And then I've got different numbers from $4 to $8 billion in new spending. And Dale talked about the one thing you're going to hear big from this administration, and also from the new president and their administration, is social justice and equity. So those are going to be the big buzzwords. All that means is basically it's socialism. It's ways to increase taxes and then take the money from everyone and then distribute to targeted areas. And that's really what the whole thing under the whole social justice kind of umbrella. I'm Energy Utility Chair, and one of the proposals is to double the Focus on Energy program. And the governor said the utilities Focus on Energy program. Well, if you don't know this, Focus on Energy is a $100 million program now that is paid by the ratepayers. So if you double that, that's $200 million now paid by the ratepayers. However, all the new programs under the Focus on Energy will have a preference to, as it's defined in the budget, people of color or low-income housing, or not housing, but low-income individuals. So you're going to be collecting dollars, ratepayers from, you know, that for utilities, and then redistribute it. So when you hear the buzzwords equity and social justice, it's a big term for redistribution of wealth. So those are things that I think, you know, everybody needs to know about when we look at this budget The good thing is that the governor tried to do the same thing last budget, and the legislature rewrote a budget, and we, I'll be honest, we increased spending in areas in the last budget, but not to the tune of $4 to $8 billion that the governor wants to do this time, or raise taxes. Last time, actually, we reduced taxes. And Dale Kanga is, since I've served with him, it's now been over 10 years, he's in the Senate. He is a big proponent on tax reduction. The big thing is, I think as a Chamber of Commerce, obviously, it's the New Berlin business community, and what is the legislature going to do? We have tried to work with the governor through the whole COVID. It's been what, 11 months now, and the fact is that the state of Wisconsin received $1.2 billion from the federal government for COVID relief. Now, the legislature had zero input as to where the $1.2 billion went. And the governor had full control of those dollars. We believe that as equal branch of government that we should have some say-so into where those dollars are spent, and more dollars are going to be coming. So, I think we want to work with the governor. We think that we have some good ideas too. We hope that he'll get that message. I think the big thing too, as we go forward for our economy and for our businesses to survive, is we need to make sure we get through this pandemic. And the biggest way I think that we're going to do that is through the rollout of a vaccine. So hopefully we'll hear from, I believe, County Executive Paul Farrell is going to be on the Waukesha County plan. That, to me, is the biggest way to get past the pandemic. And you hear about the new normal. I'd like to go back to what is normal. I don't want a new normal. And the faster we can get through the vaccine distribution, I think the closest we can get to a normal. If anybody has specific questions, I'd be glad to answer, or at the end, I'll be hanging out. So if anybody has any questions.
The question just came through in the chat. What can we as taxpayers do to help state and local reps influence better budgets and spending to make sure our tax dollars are spent in the best way?
Well, I'll tell you what, if you haven't contacted your local rep or state senator, do so. Because there's the old saying is the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And, when there's a silent majority out there, we don't hear from that. So we do need to hear, and so contact your state legislator, and also contact your local elected officials as well. The beauty is that, 2 years ago when Governor Evers was elected, unfortunately, the state voted for divided government. So that doesn't mean it has to be, inaction. It doesn't mean that it has to be left liberal agenda. I mean, we have equal branches. So the legislature right now is the one that's kind of playing goalie. It's hard to go on the offensive because at the end of the day, the governor has to sign whatever legislation we put forth. But I look at the legislature now is as goalie. So we need to stop a lot of these bad, what we feel is bad tax and spend policies.
Great. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. Great update, and we'll try and stay in touch as we usually do. I don't know, is Joe Sanfilippo online? I haven't seen him come up.
Hey, Ed.
Yes?
I know Joe was driving to Madison because he has a committee hearing, but he did say he was going to try and get in. So I don't know what that gets you, but I know he's trying to get in.
I know that's what he said. I just haven't seen him pop up here anyway. Moving forward, though, I'd like to introduce at this time County Executive Paul Farrell, and he can give us an update on things in the county and specifically, hopefully, how any of those things may impact our New Berlin Chamber members. Paul, welcome.
Hey, Ed, thanks for having me, and welcome everyone. It's kind of gloomy out there, but things are looking better and better every day. Couple of things I want to touch on, and then I'll kind of get into the whole COVID response. But just so you guys understand, there is still things going on in the world other than COVID. And one of the biggest things we've had in the counties is the county courthouse. So we've had an addition that's been going up, 8 new courtrooms that we're building. It is on track to be completed probably by the end of May, beginning of June this year. The good news about that is we are still currently $2 million under budget when it comes to that operation. So we're looking forward to that. That's kind of the first stage in kind of a reconstruction of our courthouse that is now, almost 65 years old. So we're working on updating that to make it ready for the next couple of generations. As Mayor Amon talked about, we are moving ahead with Moreland project. It is getting there slowly but surely. We're looking good at moving forward on it, getting a couple more things finalized here as we move through the engineering process. There's other road projects throughout the county that we're working on. And the nice thing is November, December are a little bit easier for us weather-wise. We're able to work on some of the projects and keep them up to speed. Unfortunately, January, February hit us, and so we're back to plowing snow. But the big thing that we've been dealing with is kind of everybody's talked about a little bit is COVID. And as Superintendent Garza kind of brought up, it's just about a year, just under a year from now. It was March 13th that we declared a state of emergency in Waukesha County due to the COVID virus. I want to give you some great news, I think. When we look at the case numbers right now, one of the biggest things that we focused on in Waukesha County is the impact to our hospitals. And so that was our major concern, is we're looking at everything that we work toward is ensuring that the hospitals don't get overwhelmed so they can continue to provide the level of care, not only to those in fact impacted by the virus, but the rest of the population. As of today, we have fewer cases in our hospitals in the HERC 7 region, which is a 10-county region of southeast Wisconsin. Fewer cases than in September 1st of last year. So right now we have 50 individuals that are in ICU, and I believe it's under 150 total individuals that are in hospitals in that region that have a COVID virus. In Waukesha County, we have about 375 active cases that are out there, which is significantly down from where we were. We're averaging right now about 45 cases a day. When you think back in November, we hit a peak of about 1,500 cases in one day. So I think we're in good shape. Things are starting to come down a little bit. I think it's due to the normalcy of a virus moving through the population. But the other one is the vaccine. And when you think about, again, a year ago, in June, the president said that they were going to move forward as quickly as they can, called it warp speed to get a vaccine up and running. A lot of people didn't believe that was going to happen. And here we sit today with 2 vaccines that are out there. A third and fourth are probably going to be approved by the end of this month or beginning of March. They're going to help us. What that correlates in Waukesha County is currently we've got about just over 53,000 individuals in the county who have gotten their first shot. 20,000 people have already had both doses, so they're in the clear. Over 65 population that we have, and in Waukesha County, we have about 80,000 people that hit that 65 and older population. Right now, 36% of that population has received their first injection. And if you think that was, the governor put that out in January 25th to allow that to occur. Over the last 3 weeks, working with our private sector partners in the healthcare and standing up our clinic, we've been able to get to 36%. The good news is our clinic is working really well. If we could get the vaccine, we're asking for 7,000 doses a week. last week, or for this week, we got 900. Next week, we got some good news. I think we're going to be about 1,800 to 2,000 doses. And so we're starting to see an increase in the doses that are getting here. But one of the things to keep in mind, when you stand up a mass clinic that can provide 7,000 doses in a week, it takes a lot of manpower and it takes a lot of effort. We put out the call to our county employees and asked if there are individuals that are willing to work within the clinic, volunteer some of their time at night if we have to go to evenings. We had over 250 of our employees volunteer to work in the clinic. And that, I mean, the energy that they brought over reflects in how they're acting within the facility. We are getting emails from individuals now on a daily basis saying they've gone through the process. It's great. People are friendly. It's smooth. As a lot of you know, one of the things that we have focused on in Waukesha County is our customer service and really trying to build up our brand within the community that we're here to help. I'm happy to say that right now, the surveys that we've asked people to fill out at the clinic put us at a 4.9 out of 5 when it comes to customer service, them going through the clinic and the ease and working through all that. It has been great to see how our county has responded. I think the collaboration, a lot of places, just the public health group is the one that's leading all this. I will tell you in Waukesha County, we have more individuals that don't work in public health who are working on this whole pandemic response. And I have 3 different department heads who are leading different task forces that goes through that to get this stuff done. It's been great to watch. I'm going to kind of bounce back when Superintendent Garza was talking about getting the schools open. One of the things that's worked effectively for us is communication. You know, Joe, you can attest to it. We've been getting together since June 3rd to talk about how we're going to open the schools. We've been talking on a weekly basis during that time to make sure that we can work with all the schools, not only the public, but the private schools, to make sure they are prepared to keep the kids going. We were there to assist them and partner with them as we move forward. And that collaboration, the communication moved into the vaccine side. The Western Lakes Fire District and the Waukesha City of Waukesha Fire Department were able to get their authorization. In fact, Western Lakes was created as a distribution hub. We partnered with them to move more of the EMS and the fire and police through their system to alleviate the pressure on the private healthcare. In turn, now they're able to assist us as we move not only through the 65 and older, but into the phase 1B, working with our education, our teachers population, and other groups. So I think there's been some great collaboration that's gone on working through all that. And that's what we're going to continue to do. It's, you know, as I said, there is light at the end of the tunnel. It's getting brighter and brighter every day. With Johnson & Johnson, I think will be a game changer when it comes to vaccines. They are a single dose system, and we're hoping to see them come online probably the beginning of March. But that'll make a huge difference. You know, when you think about it right now, we're seeing 200 million vaccines that are coming out for Pfizer and Moderna. Well, that's only 100 million people. When Johnson & Johnson comes on, they're hoping to have 150 to 200 million doses pretty quickly through April. That's 150 to 200 million people throughout the country that are going to be able to get that vaccine. So we'll continue to strive. We're waiting to see how things are going to impact at the federal level with the no COVID relief package. $1.9 trillion is a lot of money, and I don't know if it's the conversations up there from what we're hearing. We're concerned with, are we pushing debt down onto the next generations to try to appease some situations that are occurring here? At the same time, Waukesha County spent almost $11 million on its response so far to date for the COVID issue that we've had. So we'll keep moving forward. We keep working together. I know the mayor and I have had great conversations, and it's great to see the economic development that's going on down in New Berlin, the new buildings, the new opportunities, and we're working diligently to make sure that we've got some nice roadways for them, the transportation, not only of the public, but of those organizations to get their products back and forth. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I appreciate the update, Paul. Folks, just so you know, we've got kind of a tight timeline to hear from Congressman Brian Stile. So if we can have a brief update from Paul Decker, Chairman of the Waukesha County Board, we'd appreciate that. Paul, welcome.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you. The Chamber is a great organization to see that you get people together. And I want to thank Superintendent Joe Garza for his efforts. It's a great example. We need that. And of course, my partner at the county, Paul Farrell. Thank you for the work you've done. I want to say that on behalf of the county board, we've kept all our meetings live. I took some criticism last April for having open meetings, but we felt we wanted to set an example. We worked very hard at socially distancing everybody wearing masks. We looked for compliance. I just wish I would have invested in plexiglass because that probably did better than GameStop as far as its stock going up. As far as the county goes, the what Paul mentioned is the other thing is we've got to finance some of these issues. And like the city of New Berlin, we maintain a AAA bond rating. We're one of the 1% of counties across the country that does that. That allows us to borrow at about the same rate, a little bit over 1%. It keeps our debt low. It allows us to do projects like the courthouse renovation and the courthouse towers. And it allows us to continue doing the road projects that are important to commerce throughout the county. And I can tell you that some of the issues that come in front of the county board regarding roads, we constantly are having discussions on speed limits and redoing intersections because of the increase in traffic. And a lot of that is due to a lot of trucks and a lot of movement of commerce in this county. The bottom part of our county, that base part of manufacturing, component manufacturing is still very important to us. So thank you, Joe Garza and other people in the schools for keeping people interested in that. We need more workers in that area. And I was glad to see SWIC because programming is still another area that we need a lot of people in that. I want to say that there's been a couple of changes that we have approved that have happened within that apparatus, and that is we have a new director for the Center for Growth for the county, and that is Judy Taylor. I think she's going to do an excellent job. I know she is. She comes from Waukesha County, has a lot of that in her blood, ran a successful manufacturing company, understands that part of it, as well as commerce, and is going to really, I believe, work with the municipalities throughout the county to invigorate our and continue the great development. And Mayor, congratulations on your development. That is some great work to see, and I'm glad you're making the investment in your city center. That's important for all the villages and cities throughout the county if we're going to continue to attract and retain people, young people, to fill our schools and to fill our jobs. The other big new part of that apparatus is we have a new president now at WCTC, Richard Barnhouse, after an extensive look through by the WCTC board. And thank you again, Joe Garza, for being part of that. We have an excellent new leader at WCTC that has already reached out to many of the businesses and understands the need for being a training center for some of these new skills. And I want to address the fact that in workforce, when we see some businesses, service industries and others being affected by this, those workers, there's plenty of other opportunities if they're retrained to work in new jobs. We have, again, a very low unemployment rate. We're close to where we were prior to the pandemic here in Waukesha County. So the need for workers will continue to grow, and the need for housing for those workers and transportation certainly will be there. Regarding our issues that we're concerned about at the county, we'd like to see, and we are working with, as I thank Dale Koyenga and Mike Kuglich for being such great partners to us. Thank you very much. But we need, as Executive Farrell said, there are still issues that we are working on. Mental health being one. The drug epidemic hasn't gone away. Foster care. And I'm going to just go through very quickly. We are looking to get regional crisis stabilization centers. We want one very close by. This would reduce the time and cost to get people to those centers rather than to Mendota or to Winnebago. And that keeps them we like to keep them out of our jail, to keep them segregated, because if it's a mental health issue, if we attack that, we can keep that part of recidivism down and really care for that individual. So those are important, as well as funding for crisis intervention. There is some of that in the proposed budget. We'd like to see that stay in, because we'd like to make sure that when something happens, especially when you were talking about domestic violence and some other issues, if we can attack that from more of a crisis intervention than rather just put people in our jail and our court system, we can also interdict there in a way that is more positive for the community and keep people working. I think that's very important. The other area is our Aging, Disability, and Resource Center. As Executive Farrell mentioned, we have over 80,000 people over 65. Yes, we want to get them vaccinated, but we also want to keep them involved and keep them in our homes as long as we can, and keep them active so that they are mentally and physically healthy. So that type of work can really help the overall health and development. As I pointed out to one of our representatives when we were going back and forth with the state regarding people over 65 being vaccinated, people 65 to 75 are still very active, and many of those people are retired and retired well and do well here in Waukesha County, and they'd be at our restaurants, they'd go out. So we want to make sure they're vaccinated and safe. And we also want to make sure they're cared for properly. So one of the things that we're continuing to work on will be, again, road projects throughout the county. We have, again, an increase in growth that we're very proud of. And thank you for the people throughout the schools that have kept open. And as Executive Farrell said, a lot of people want to live, work, and stay here because of our access to great healthcare systems, as well as access to great restaurants and jobs, and very, very livable cities, as Mayor Ament brought up. And we have that throughout the county. And please support your local businesses. Stay safe, and hopefully we can stay open. And again, I want to thank Mike Kuglich, because he brought up the one thing that I keep emphasizing, and that is education is the key. I've been in all these discussions, both locally, regionally, statewide, and the only thing I can look at, Mike, is you're exactly right. We've got to keep education at the top end if we want equity. There's so many career opportunities if people get the training and education. And we are working very hard on that throughout the county. The county board continues to look at, again, every which way we can keep our costs in line and do the best with the dollars we have. So we look for, and one thing that I know that's a big proposal out there. I want to point out that Waukesha County is only one of 4 counties that doesn't have any type of sales tax at all. So that's all I'll say on that issue. So if there's any questions, I'd be glad to take them.
All right, I appreciate it, Paul. I'd like to thank you and also the county executive. Communication between you folks and the chamber is excellent, as it is with our other representatives. The chamber has worked hard over the last few years trying to develop that good working relationship, and I appreciate your cooperation. I see that Congressman Stile is on, and Kurt, if it's okay with you, I just want to pull an audible and get him out of here then, and then we can hear from you if that's okay. Congressman, if you're ready.
Sure. Well, appreciate you guys having me on. I'm on a timeline here. I got about till 15 after the hour. I got a live radio interview, so I have a bit of a hard stop, but appreciate you guys being on. I thought maybe an opportunity just to walk through kind of a high level legislative update as to how things are playing out in Washington, D.C., and then happy to answer a couple questions if that sounds like a good use of time. I see a nod.
Sounds good.
So let's dive in. What we're really seeing play out in Washington, D.C. right now is what everybody's calling reconciliation. Think of this really as just a fancy word for how you get around parliamentary procedure in the United States Senate. There's no binding law underlying this. There's no constitutional background for this. It's how do you get legislation passed in the Senate with what I'll call a simple majority vote, meaning 50+1 rather than 60 votes, which you would need to ultimately end a filibuster in the Senate. And so interestingly, we're working under this reconciliation framework, again, just kind of a parliamentary procedure. But what that sets up is we work backwards, if you will. So the House and the Senate passed a resolution that said, in effect, we're going to take out $1.9 trillion in debt. Now, how are we going to use that money? And so Congress is working its way through this bill. It's made it through most of the House committees. It'll ultimately likely then go over to the Senate. We think the Senate's going to act first. And if I can, I'll just kind of go through some of what I think are the top line items that I think will likely be in the final product. It's a work in progress. And so, until it's fully done, you don't know what's going to be there. But I'll give you the top line items. I have some pretty strong disagreements with some of the things in here, but I think it's important to know what's likely to come. So one, you saw the House version of the bill passed with a $15 an hour minimum wage. Unemployment insurance benefits extended until the end of 2021, a $400 plus up. So that's on top of Wisconsin's $370 a week. That adds $400 on top of that. As you're thinking about that, that's really adding $10 per hour if you worked a 40-hour work week on top of Wisconsin's $9.25, which would drive that up to $19.25 would be the high end of unemployment insurance. It includes $1,400 stimulus checks, $50 billion for coronavirus testing, $20 billion for the national vaccine program, $10 billion towards PPE, the protective equipment, $170 billion, and these are all billions, $170 billion for K through 12 education, another $130 billion to open schools, $35 billion for public institutions, think about community college or HBCUs, and then $350 billion for state and local governments. That's where you'll probably see me kind of talk a lot about my frustration about the risk of bailing out states like Illinois. That's going to be in that $350 billion for state and local governments. Extended paid medical leave for families, $30 billion, again with B's, $30 billion going to rental assistance, extending the moratorium on foreclosures, and looking at eviction policies in there as well. And so we could get into all the details. The way that I scale this for people, because when we talk billions and trillions in Washington, I think it gets pretty confusing for folks to actually wrap your head around what is $1.9 trillion. I give it to you this way. Over the course of the last 12 months, Congress has already passed 4 major pieces of coronavirus legislation. So most recently, just about a month and a half ago, at the end of President Trump's term, we had a piece go through for about $900 billion. We had a series of legislation go through about a year ago. Think about the first CARES Act program that provided PPP to local businesses. In all, we authorized or spent $4 trillion. That's related to coronavirus. That's on top of your regular operations of your federal government. So that does not include Social Security, Medicare, the United States military. Those things are separate. Just $4 trillion as it relates to the coronavirus. That means if you divide that out by the 330 million people that live in the United States of America, that's roughly $12,000 per person for every human in the United States of America. So for a family of 4, that's $48,000. So you can buy a new Cadillac with that amount of money. Congress is now moving forward with under this reconciliation process, which would allow the Democrats who have the votes to pass this without Republican votes, and that's kind of the path that this is headed, to pass another $1.9 trillion in spending. That'd be $5,700 per individual. Again, in the neighborhood of $22,000 for a family of 4, driving a family of 4 total number within a 12-month window to $68,000. I have real concerns as it relates to the inflationary impact of this. I have concerns about the impacts that this has on getting people back into the workforce. But I wanted to give you just kind of a bullet point by the facts of where I see this legislation going. It's going to move quickly. The target date for the Democratic leadership is to have this pass the House in the middle of March, kind of targeting that March 14, March 15 timeline. And I think it's something that's really impactful, not only in the short term on, I know we have a lot of folks in the business community here, as you're going out and trying to hire folks and bring folks into the workforce, but also long-term impacts on the fiscal stability of the country. And so maybe instead of just giving you more information, maybe I pause there, and happy to answer any questions you guys have. I put a lot on the table in a short amount of time, but a lot of stuff is going to be coming down the pipe here in Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Congressman. I don't see any questions that are popping up just yet, but I do want to thank you for carving some time out for us. We greatly appreciate it. And we will move on then. Kurt, are you still there?
I am, Ed. How are you?
I'm doing well. Folks, WMC, Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce, is the state chamber of commerce, and Kurt Bauer is president and CEO, and he has his finger on statewide issues as well as national issues. So I wanted to invite him to give us an overview of what their priorities will be for the upcoming year. Kurt, welcome.
Well, thank you, Ed. I appreciate it. This has been very informative. I've appreciated hearing from all of the presenters, the congressman, county exec, the various members of the legislature. So I'm just going to talk very briefly about liability protections, payroll protection plan as it relates to state taxation. I'll make a few comments about the state budget. We don't have that much time. I can really summarize that as that it's just incredibly anti-business, but I'll give a few examples. But let me start, Ed, by just praising you and the New Berlin Chamber of Commerce. Many of you probably know that WMC is involved in a lawsuit against Governor Evers and the Wisconsin Department of Health Services because they were looking to release the names of businesses that had 2 or more employees test positive for COVID-19. We didn't really see any reason to do that. Businesses were already suffering. We thought that was just shaming and trying to embarrass businesses, hurting their brand. There was no public health benefit because much of this was very old, and there's no way of knowing whether or not those employees contracted it in the workplace. Frankly, we think that the business community deserves tremendous credit for doing what they've done to keep people, their employees, safe at work. In fact, we think the safest place for Wisconsinites has been during this COVID-19 pandemic has been at work. And when we needed to act quickly to file this suit, the New Berlin Chamber of Commerce stepped up and responded quickly and joined us in this suit. We needed a response, I think, within like 2 hours or something like that, and you were able to respond quickly. And if you didn't do that, we wouldn't have been able to block the release of that information. And that's where we stand right now. We're fighting the governor. We're fighting the Department of Health Services. We're also fighting the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, which wants this information for no other reason to embarrass businesses at a time when they've already suffered. So where that stands right now is that we were successful in blocking the release of the information in a Waukesha Circuit Court. And the Evers administration and the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel have appealed, and it's before the 4th Appeals Court here in Madison, which isn't great for us, but there's no action on it right now. And we do think we have a very strong case with privacy laws being what they are. So thanks again, Ed. Thanks to all of you at the New Berlin Chamber. Briefly, liability protections for businesses and other entities from being basically savaged by trial attorneys during COVID-19 has been a priority of ours. We've been working on this for quite some time. Some fits and starts. Looked like we had a deal, then it fell apart. But just yesterday, the Joint Finance Committee was able to include the liability protections that we had been pushing for in a unemployment insurance package. It passed out of Joint Finance unanimously, which means it's a bipartisan vote. So now that will go to the governor, and we hope that he will sign it. On another bipartisan vote, both Republicans and Democrats voted overwhelmingly to not tax the payroll protection plan funds. They were never intended to be taxed at the federal level or the state level, but the Department of Revenue here at the state level interpreted the law that they could tax it, and it was about a $440 million line item, I believe it was. Obviously, we didn't want that, so we moved quickly, working with the legislature, and just this week it passed both houses on a party line, not party line, a bipartisan vote. So that will go to the governor as well, and we hope that he'll sign that as well. Now to the state budget, as I said, I tweeted the day after, and I just said that, look, the simplest critique I can give you about the governor's budget is it's irresponsibly anti-business. It would severely erode our state's business climate and economic competitiveness, and we need our lawmakers to recognize that raising taxes and imposing other costly burdens on the economy during a pandemic-induced downturn is the absolute wrong approach. And I'll just quickly summarize some of the other representatives and have mentioned some of the provisions, but it's about a 10% increase in state spending during an economic downturn, which we don't think makes a whole heck of a lot of sense. At least $1 billion in new taxes, not including energy tax, not including the authorization for local governments to hike the sales tax, the repeal of the manufacturers portion of the manufacturers and agricultural production tax credit. That just doesn't make any sense. Manufacturing is our largest economic sector. It has a multiplying effect throughout the economy, and the supply chain is the backbone of the middle class. Why on earth would you want to tax manufacturers coming out of a economic downturn, particularly too when they stepped up and many of them retooled production for PPE and a variety of things that were needed during COVID-19. The budget would legalize recreational marijuana. We think that's a bad idea from a workforce perspective. We already have too many people outside the workforce. We also think it's dangerous from a workplace health and safety perspective. And then finally, it repeals right to work, which has been a game changer for the state's economy and our business climate and our ability to recruit businesses into the state. Frankly, my staff has put together about 5 pages summary of the bad provisions in this budget. That's just a summary. It's a very anti-business budget, and we call on lawmakers to piece together a pragmatic budget that recognizes that you don't want to raise the cost of doing business during an economic downturn. So Ed, I'll send it back to you.
Thanks, Kurt. I appreciate the comments. I appreciate all the help and cooperation. WMC's been a fantastic partner for us and has allowed us to more easily disseminate information, particularly around the COVID and impacts and things like that to our members. So we thank you for that. The last few years, we've been fortunate to have somebody from the U.S. Chamber, Ethan Hallier, do a presentation that's become one of the most popular portions of this event. And Ethan is standing by to help us out again this year and kind of give us an overview on the national perspective of how things are going. So welcome to Ethan this morning.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks for having me. Let me share my screen here to get a PowerPoint up. There we go. And I will say before we get started, I am, I guess, a little sad that we're not at the movie theater this year, but hopefully in 2022 we will be back at the movie theater. That's always kind of a fun trip. I think it's the first time and I think I probably make this joke every time. It's the first time I've seen my PowerPoint on the silver screen, and it's a little lackluster, but it is always kind of fun to be in there and see that. Before we get started, let's take a look at the economy kind of at a broad base. While obviously things have gotten better since March, we still have 10 million fewer jobs than we did. We've had 163,000 plus businesses close since that time, and it's estimated about 100,000 of those are going to stay closed. And if we keep at this current pace, it's going to take until about February of 2022 to regain the jobs we lost. If you look at this little line graph here, you can kind of see how the economy was moving up prior to the COVID-19. Obviously, that period in March happened where everything shut down and most businesses really kind of hit a steep and sharp downturn. However, since then, there's obviously been some businesses that have been able to come back and even better than March of 2020, and then there's some that have gotten even worse since then. If you look at the better side, and again, this is not, this is more of a general example. Obviously, not every case, but grocery stores, hardware stores, tech company, retail. For the most part, they're kind of on the up and up. On the other end, if you're a bar, or a restaurant, or a hotel, or an entertainment venue, you thought you had bottomed out, you maybe made a slight improvement, and you're kind of on your way back down, especially as more of these shutdowns started to happen. Now the state's kind of opening back up a little bit. Maybe it's gotten a little bit better. However, there's a huge gap in between, you know, kind of two different sectors of our economy, and that's kind of where we want to close that gap. I can talk a little bit about what was passed here at the end of the year. I think probably most people have seen this, so I'll be fairly brief, and we can do questions on it if people have questions about it. There was quite a few changes to the PPP program, besides the fact that it was restarted back up. One of the things is that it's now tax neutral, so you don't have to worry about paying tax on the PPP proceeds or not being able to, you know, expense things. That's all taken care of, and it sounds like it's taken care of at your state level as well. That's good. It's not taken care of here in the state of Minnesota, so that's a big push here. Another thing is now you can use PPP funds to pay, you know, like besides just general like operating costs. If you put up, let's say like a sneeze shield at your cash register, you can now use PPP funds to cover that. If you added a drive-through window, if you're a restaurant or a coffee shop or something, you can use PPP funds to pay for that. And also, if your business was damaged during some of the race riots in the summer, you can use PPP funds to fix that as well. However, important thing, PPP money, 60% of it still has to be used towards payroll. Other changes. You probably think back to March, there was these EIDL grants that the SBA was putting out. Essentially what they were used as like a cash advance. It was money you could get before you got your loan. And before, if you got an EIDL grant, let's say you got an $8,000 EIDL grant and a $100,000 PPP loan, your total loan money that you could get back was $92,000. They would cut off that EIDL grant from the top. That's no longer the case. We can talk more about that later once we get there. Another big change is that you kind of had an 8-week period to spend your money. Now you have up to 24 weeks to spend that money, so a little more flexibility. And if you take out a loan less than $150,000, there's a much simplified loan process to go through. So big changes for how you qualify. So to get a PPP loan now, let's say you got a first draw and you want to get a second draw, you got to spend down that money. You don't necessarily have to go through like the forgiveness process, but the money has to be out of your account. The program runs until the end of March. You have to have less than 300 people working for you. That number used to be 500. You have to have a 25% cut in gross revenue. That's a change from the first time. Now, if you're a chamber of commerce or any 501c6, a news media organization, you now qualify for PPP. And also, here's the big change. We can talk about this later as well. Employee retention tax credit. This is a tax credit now that you can take advantage of and get a PPP loan as well. This was not the case prior to this bill passing at the end of the year. Another big change is that if you're a publicly traded company, you no longer qualify for PPP loans. And to clarify, if you never got a PPP loan in 2020, you can go get your first loan, you could spend that money down, and if you still have a cut in your revenue, you can go get another one all in this kind of 3-month period. So if you never got a PPP loan, you can still get that as well, and you'll qualify under the first set of rules, so you don't have to, you know, show any sort of economic downturn. You can just apply and you'll get the loan. So the maximum loan amount, and this is the same as before, you're going to take an average of a 12-month period, and you'll multiply it by 2.5. If you're in the accommodation or food service business, you can multiply it by 3.5. If you're a seasonal business, pick any 12-week period between February 15th of 19 and February 15th of 20. And now the loans are capped out at $2 million. Again, it's really a focus on smaller businesses. The loan forgiveness process, pretty much the same as before. If you cut wages or if you cut the number of people working for you, you're going to lose some of that loan forgiveness. However, those safe harbors that were there before are still there. You can bring people back. You can restore wages during your loan term and not risk losing some of that money. If we have questions on this, we can always go back to it. So the tax credit that I was talking about, this is something that kind of flew under the radar before, because if you took a PPP loan, you could not take this tax credit. Now you can double up. But when I say double up, doesn't mean you can, pay someone, you can't pay your workers twice, but you can use the funds in different ways. This tax credit, what it is, it's a 70% tax credit on $10,000 of wages per quarter. So it's up to a $14,000 tax credit. And this goes through the end of June. So you have 2 quarters to kind of take advantage of this. If you have a decline of 20% in your gross revenue compared to 2019, you can qualify. That used to be a 50% decline. And they've kind of expanded it for businesses that have less than or equal to 500 people working for them. It used to be less than or equal to 100. You can qualify for that, for this tax credit as well. Again, if we have questions on it, we can come back. The big change here is that if you took a PPP loan before, you can take this tax credit now, and you can take a second draw PPP loan and also qualify for this tax credit. Just to review, PPP loans you get through your private lender. And if you want to go this tax credit route, talk to your bookkeeper, or if you use one of those softwares, they can kind of run you through this tax credit process. It's a little simpler than it looks. EIDL loans, we talked a little bit about this again. So we talked about, or excuse me, EIDL grants. This is through the SBA. These are a little harder to qualify for now, but like I said before, if you get this in a PPP, you no longer lose PPP loan forgiveness if you get an EIDL grant. The different qualifiers now: less than 300 people working for you. You have to be in a low income neighborhood. So if you qualify for the new market tax credit program, you'll qualify for this. You have to 30% cut in revenue during any week period compared to March 2nd of 2020 and the end of the year of 2020 compared to any 8-week period beforehand. Again, if we have questions about this, we can come back to this slide. I'll go through this briefly as well. This is the brand new program. It's the grants for shuttered venues. If you have 70% of your income generated by a live event, so I think of the movie theater that we were in, they would most likely qualify for this. If they had less than 500 people working for them, a 25% cut in gross revenue, and did not receive a PPP loan after the 27th of December. What's different about this? It's through the SBA, so it's a grant. There's no loan process you have to go through, and grants are equal to lesser of $10 million or 45% of gross earned revenue in 2019. And the funds can kind of essentially be used the same way that you would use a PPP loan. The big difference is this is a grant, so you don't go through a lender, you go through the SBA. Once again, if we have questions, I'd more than happy to come back to this slide as well. And also we have a bunch of guides at uschamber.com/coronavirus. It's a simple way to kind of walk through all the loan programs that are going on right now through the federal government. It doesn't have the application there, but it's a simplified process to explain what you need and what you should do when you go to the bank to get a PPP loan or contact the SBA for a grant. So let's take a look at Washington a little more broader. First bullet point there seems obvious. Who's Joe Biden? Obviously, we all know who he is, but what I mean by that, is he going to be a president, Joe Biden, or are we going to get more of the Joe Biden of the years in the Senate of wheeling and dealing with, GOP members and trying to get deals done? Right now, it looks more like Joe Biden, the president, as Congressman Stiles said. Right now, the House and the Senate, or excuse me, the Senate is going through a process where they only need to get 51 votes to pass financial bills instead of the normal 60 vote threshold with the filibuster. If we look at the Senate and House more broadly, everything's really tight, and this is why they're going through that budget reconciliation process to only need 51 votes, because as we know, the Senate is tied, and the U.S. House, while it's not tied, it's about as close as it really ever gets. So things truly need to be bipartisan, or things are going to just squeak through with partisan votes. But as we've already seen, Senator Joe Manchin, Senator Sinema, they've both been ones that have come out already and said that, we're not just going to be, the hand up vote, for all the Democrats, that, we're going to hold, the House, or we're going to hold the Senate accountable for some of the votes coming through. Phase 5, this is what Congressman Stiles talked about. Hard to believe that this would be the 5th stimulus bill. I'll just hit a couple highlights of here and kind of things that we'd like to see or not see in there. I mean, money to reopen schools, money for childcare providers, any way to increase the vaccination output, whether that's getting the National Guard more involved. I've seen a lot of groups talk about that, including us. One of the big business pieces of this is that we would like to see an automatic trigger to kind of sunset some of these pandemic unemployment programs versus just having a blanketed end date. Maybe once states reach a certain unemployment level, then some of this extra unemployment starts to cut off. Again, not really picky what that looks like, but I think having a blanketed end date is not fiscally responsible, or probably the right thing to get people back to work. Here was kind of an interesting stat, building off that unemployment. Right now, that $300 supplement it results in about 25% of those on unemployment making more money. Under the Biden and Democrat plan, if they raise that to $400, it would be 40% of people making more on unemployment. And obviously that's not what we want. We want people to be able to go back to work and not have to pick, between their boss and their family and unemployment and working. We like to see that a little more close to even. Stimulus, as was talked about, study we did is that the families that make less than $50,000 a year are really the ones that are experiencing more of the loss of income. So maybe they do stimulus to target it there as well, versus the kind of the current limits that they have it set as of right now. I'll run over just two priorities for us. We started this campaign with a very large coalition, kind of spearheaded by us. It's the Bill by the 4th. It's to get a infrastructure package not only passed, but that we actually start building on it by July 4th. This is roads and bridges. This is rural broadband, all that stuff. Again, if we have questions on that, we can talk more about this as well. And it's not just getting the project started. It's how are we going to fund it in a responsible way versus, continuing to borrow. Immigration, very briefly, we kind of want a more stable approach, especially for Dreamers, TPS recipients, age 4 spouses. It seems like they're the last 4 years kind of always in limbo. We'd like to see more of a permanent structure for these folks. So just so they have a little more idea if they'll be able to stay and work in this country. And if we have questions, again, we can talk more about this, but I don't want to take away all the question time. In fact, I will end the PowerPoint here and hopefully I didn't go too long and we can get a couple questions.
Thanks, Ethan. I appreciate the update. One thing that was interesting regarding the infrastructure program that you're working on, I was part of a program earlier in the year, or I should say towards the end of last year, and they stated that Wisconsin is more reliant with our businesses between manufacturing, tourism, things like that. Wisconsin is more reliant on infrastructure than most states are. So I think that's an important program to be working on. Anybody have any questions coming up at all? If none, we're at 9:31. I know he said we'd run till 9:30. For everybody that hung on to the very end, I appreciate it. The goal today was to give everybody a pretty comprehensive update on where things are, both on the local, county, state, and national level. I think we've done that. Again, thank you everyone for participating. Watch for updates, and we hopefully will have a recording of this for folks that missed it in our weekly New Berlin Business Update, which comes out every Monday morning. So thank you and have a good rest of the day. Thanks for all the participants.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
Have a good day.